Well, I did call bullshit on the Prime Minister once and I got in big trouble with my mum. Like, we've now got 43% renewables in the grid. That was fought tooth and nail every step of the way. And I think that the Nationals and One Nation really do such a disservice to people when they keep railing against it, when this could be a huge opportunity for most regional communities.
Is there base that can benefit
100%.
The most?
We've got this amazing scenario. We can have our cake and eat it too. We can solve the environmental problems and have cheap energy. We just need to bring more renewables into the system quickly. Like, why wouldn't you? The speed and scale of global change can make it feel futile to do anything, but that is the recipe to us all giving up and that being a self-fulfilling prophecy.
We spoke already on the podcast. We spoke a lot about policy last time because an election was imminent.
That's right.
We did speak about this last time, that a lot of the way to get people over the line when it comes to climate action is to speak a language which we find in common, which is money. You know, I don't like wasting it. You don't like wasting it. I want to make sure that my kids are healthy and housed and, you know, I have a comfortable retirement just like anybody. And when you start speaking in those terms, the ideology of like, why? I don't know if I mentioned this last time. I was making a documentary. We're way out in Western Sydney, and like at the part that Blacktown goes, ugh, like way out there. 4 out of 5 houses had solar panels.
Yeah.
Not because they love trees, because it's cheap. Because they run their AC all day.
Yeah.
Because it's 40 degrees out there.
And now electric cars, the highest take-up is in Western Sydney. The highest take-up of batteries is in Western Sydney too. So it's really an outer suburban story of keeping costs down, and sure, the environmental implications are good too. But yeah, it's driven by cost.
The cost part or the picture of how the economics would work was way beyond us in the conversation that I first remember, which is in the mid-'80s, talking about greenhouse gases. And I know we spoke about hope last time. We're going to talk about it again today. And somehow the world got together and went, okay, we can figure out how to do this without this stuff. And it took them 6 years or so. I think they signed the agreement in 92. And they got it done. They pulled these particularly harming gases out of the thing and they made a big difference. But the economics of how it might impact a country were well beyond anyone. But we knew it was bad. We knew it was terribly, terribly bad. You were thinking about this stuff on Schoolies. On Schoolies Week, most people are kind of trying to figure out, like, now, did I go through my bag enough times to get all the condoms out of there so Mum doesn't see them? All right, have I hidden all the Midori caps that we were keeping as trophies? You wrote on a list of things to do, you wrote, I'm going to save the world from environmental problems.
I know. And I look back, it's actually 20 years this summer since I started working on climate change. So I've had a bit of reflective time about, you know, the various efforts I've put in and has it been enough? Was it the right thing? All of those sorts of things. And I look back at that sort of self as an 18-year-old, and I think that level of naivety is actually so important in the world, to just believe that you could have an impact that's beyond yourself. I don't know why I thought that that would be something that I could be a part of, but I did. And I think that's one of the things I really want to cultivate in my own children and in all of our children, a sense of agency, that if we work together, we can create change, and that it's the only thing that's ever has.
Well, yeah, but I don't know, I want you to reveal anything here, but were you coming down from something? Like, was it a Tuesday? Like, were you having a particularly bad morning? What was going on in your life that you were aware of the increasing danger of environmental concerns?
Well, I wasn't really aware of climate change at that time. It was all of the other sort of issues. I think what I was grappling for, which I think a lot of people do, is just what is the purpose of me being on this earth? I was sort of really struggling for a sense of meaning, and I did that after that time. For my early 20s, I was really struggling for what is the thing I should be doing in this world. I was very concerned about refugees and Indigenous issues and a range of other sort of social justice environment issues.
You got to pick one, otherwise you can't see out your back window for all the stickers.
That's very true.
Know? I
had a lot of stickers on my first car.
Oh, bet you did. But eventually you figure out, like, if I sprint in every direction at once, I get nowhere.
Yeah, and to find your little piece of the puzzle and saying, well, I'm going to do this bit was very reassuring for me and led me down the path that I'm on.
You started the Youth Climate Coalition when you were 22, and then just a few short years later, probably because of some rules that you were a part of writing, you had to leave because you got too old.
I did. I had to retire when I was 27. Because we wanted it to be genuinely youth run. The idea was young people are being heavily impacted by climate change. They need a voice. And so we had to age ourselves out.
Wow, what was that like to hand the keys over?
It was great, actually. We had really strong young people coming through that could take over from us. The woman that took over from me, Ellen Sandals, now the member for Melbourne for the Greens, she has continued a career in this space. And there's been amazing leaders since that time. The AYCC is turning 20 at the end of this year. So it's had a real longevity.
What's it like to, even at 27, and I'm sure you had a succession plan in place before that because you can see it coming down the pipe. What's it like to identify one or two people and help them become something that they may not realise they can be yet?
Well, I think in creating something, people often find it obviously really hard to give away. But I think, and this is true of the current...
things, I don't know, like negative gearing or capital gains tax discount or, inner city property. I don't know. Yes?
Yeah. Well, for me, I did describe it at the time as like my baby, but it never really belonged to me. I saw it as belonging to something bigger, and that my job was to contribute on the issue rather than through a particular organisation. And I feel that the same about the Climate Council that I've now founded and worked in for over 10 years. But when I move on, that it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all the people who have been part of it.
So when you're identifying the people, I'm sure you had a short list. What kind of qualities were you looking for? What does it do for you when you're able to identify in someone a thing that you don't realise, but you could run this one day, and helping them move into that space and grow into it?
Yeah, that's been one of the really satisfying parts of my career, not just at the AYCC, but in different roles, seeing people coming up and thinking, actually, you can do more, and going to them and having that conversation about their capacity they might not see. And it's often young women. Generally, young men are much more confident of their skill set, but young women often don't see what they could potentially be doing. So that's, a really satisfying conversation. But the hardest thing is often convincing them that they have the skills and capacity, that they don't need to have everything kind of ticked off now to be able to do it.
I mean, this is aside from climate, but I think people listening and watching could probably gain something from it. Because if we stood on set, right, if we were working on a big TV show or something, I could point at one particular production runner who right now is, getting coffee for this person, getting, Freo frogs for that person, making sure that and go, that person right there is a showrunner in 3 years. I'll guarantee it. Even though this is their second job, they've got it. They've got the thing. There's 4 other people that do that job on set, but you can just tell. What, if people listening, for your own kids or for people who are like finishing school, this might be the last year of school, what kind of qualities do you think it takes to be the person that gets identified like that?
I reckon you've got to have the drive. You've got to be willing to be, you're there early, you're hungry. I'm always looking for someone that is hungry and passionate about it, and you're really interested in learning. You're just gobbling up everything that others are saying that are more senior to you. You're reading, you're out there looking at what other organisations are doing. So you're hungry and you're learning is the things that I look for.
That hunger for and curiosity, I would say, they're so important, because when it's a 14-hour day and you haven't had a day off in 31 days, that's the thing that gets you out of bed.
Yeah, it's that intangible thing within you that is just that drive to, I want to do this. I'm so excited to learn more. And curiosity is a lovely word because it also implies a degree of vulnerability too, that you're willing to be wrong and then learn from that.
What else could I learn here? And I'm sure at every level that you've ascended, I mean, it's quite clear when I look at people who were in leadership positions that I've worked under, anytime someone got there and went, no, you can't tell me anything, well, it didn't last very long.
Yeah.
The people that got there and went, I don't know what I don't know, but I know we're going to be okay, let's go. They're the people that succeed.
One of the most inspiring leaders I have ever met was Professor Will Steffen, who's one of the heroes in the climate science space. He died about 3 years ago. And when I met him, I was in my late 20s. He's in his, I think, maybe late 60s. And he's a giant of the field. And I was there to help him with his communications and to communicate clearly on all the complexity of the climate science. And he could have just dismissed me, like, what do you know? I've been doing this for many years. I've been trained by CSIRO as a science communicator. But we had this beautiful partnership where he was like, you've clearly got something to offer. I've got something to offer. Let's do it together. And we came up with a bunch of really important phrases at the time. Like at that time, scientists were still arguing about how to communicate on a range of different things. And on heat waves, for instance, we came up up with the phrase, it's getting hotter, longer, and more often. And that distillation was really hard, but we got there, and then he was able to convince a whole lot of other scientists that that's how we should talk about heat waves, for instance. But what a leader to be able to be like, I see you've got potential, I see you've got something to offer, I'll listen, I'll shift what I'm doing.
It's not even David versus Goliath. It's not even boy swallows universe. It's universe swallows boy. It is like gargantuan in scale, the issue that we as a community face. And as one person sitting on a beach writing in a notebook, I want to save the world from this stuff. That's a bold task. And sometimes it can really beat you down. While you're working with Will, there must have been some part of you that was like, well, I'm finding it's really hard, but I know he's here. What was it like? And you don't have to talk about this, but I think it's important that, people might want to understand when a person that you kind of know in the back of your mind, well, they're always there. They're always going to be here leading the fight. He passed away from pancreatic cancer. It's one of those really fast, they're there, then they're not. It's a quick one. It's devastating. What's it like to continue a fight, without the person who was the champion there?
Oh, it's so hard. Will was the person I would ring when I was scared, and he would reassure me. And when you've got like one of the fathers of climate science reassuring you, you feel like, okay, I can go and give hope to other people. So many times where I literally in the first year would pick up the phone and go, oh, he's not here. So, you find other people to draw on, but I have his photo on my desk, and I often say to myself, what would Will tell me? And I find that very helpful. I can still hear his laugh in my mind. And I like that joy that he had despite, looking into the abyss was very inspiring.
When you do your job, you have to be very clear in your communication. You only have people's attentions for 10 seconds, if that. You've called prime ministers by their first name and, very clearly stated how they might not be doing a very good job. Has that ever cost you anything, like personally, when you're, saying this about that or about Scott, who famously turned up to Australian Parliament holding a lump of coal? Has that cost you personally, like with friendships or, family relationships? Does it make Christmas difficult?
Well, I did call bullshit on the Prime Minister once, and I got in big trouble with my mum. She said, you can never, ever swear on TV again.
But Mum, it was bullshit.
It was bullshit. I used it sparingly, I promise. It hasn't really cost me in that personal realm so much. It's more that the attacks that you get externally. So there was a period of time in the sort of around 2011 to 2013 when it was very heated, where I got death threats and people breathing down the phone and all those sorts of things. You still get, whenever you're on Sky News, you get that deluge of hate.
It's a given.
But
that's what you're there for.
But most people agree with most of the things I'm saying now. It's not nearly, we're not in that controversial era that we were in that time.
It always strikes me because I've worked with people who are not just in denial. It's such an identity thing. Right?
It is.
And any airing of an idea that may perhaps threaten that identity is seen as an intense personal attack, an attack on their very selves. And so, because I try to think, it's like, what would cause somebody to make a death threat on a complete stranger who's showing you a graph? Like, how frightened are they that they think the only way to keep myself safe is to threaten this pretty lady on the television who's showing me some numbers?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? You wouldn't want to go into the brain there and see it. But I think it's important to know that it's such a small proportion of the community. And it even was back then, like the denial, people that purely denied it were always a relatively small percentage. But I think now as people see it consistently in their own life, we know it is happening. I think the worry I have is that there's a degree of normalisation. As humans, we adapt to whatever we are experiencing. So something like a catastrophic day. The first catastrophic day was in 2009 during Black Saturday in Victoria. But now we see catastrophic days regularly across Australia.
Are you talking about a catastrophic fire rating?
Sorry, yeah, catastrophic fire.
So for people
danger.
listening overseas, we have fire ratings here in Australia. There was a Ash Wednesday bushfires in the 80s, I think. There was a big alert system set up after that. And it was like total fire bans and things, and there was like this temperature thing on the side of the highway.
Yeah.
It's either the green or it's yellow or it's red, and you go total fire ban. And they had to make the scale bigger. They had to go, we've gone beyond that very high fire danger. We've gone to catastrophic, which means like, don't think you and your garden hose can take care of stuff.
No.
Get the fuck out.
Get away as quickly as possible and in advance because you can't fight it. And firefighters...
we can't fight it.
Yeah, firefighters can't fight it. Like, they can't fight it from the air because the fire creates its own storm to create more fire, which is just terrifying.
Pyroclastic lightning.
It's just wild, isn't it?
It's terrifying. It is hard to communicate that to somebody because the way that we perceive the world, it's the same way that we can't perceive the scale of our universe. We live in it, but we can't actually think about how big it is. Our brain doesn't work that way. It's near impossible for us to experience or put into words or even conceive of the rate of change and how impactful it is, how slow it is, both for damaging or, trying to repair things. It's just nearly impossible for us to think about that stuff.
Yeah, and we adapt. We start to think, okay, well, I've heard of catastrophic days, and now we're having many of them, but it's hard to see in one human life, like what was it before and what will it be in the future. But we do need to know what it was, what it is, and what it could be to ensure that we are acting in the way that we should. There is a degree of normalisation that, we see lots of catastrophic events. No, they're happening with much higher frequency. They're happening much faster. So continuing to jolt people out of complacency is part of what my job is. I'm not that much fun at parties, really.
We talked about the economic conversation earlier. Whenever I did a gig for the Australian Insurance Brokers Association thing, it was their awards night, right? It was a huge, huge room. They deal with a lot of money, all right? Billions of dollars these guys deal with. And I've done it twice now. I'm very grateful because those are the people that are going to change the country, I reckon. It's the insurance people that will go, actually, no, we can't insure this business. Well, if government isn't going to move, we're going to have to just say, we're not going to risk that. Sorry, if you live north of Townsville and you want to open a bowling alley, good luck.
Yeah, and already so many parts of Australia are uninsurable or effectively uninsurable because it's so expensive. Just before the last floods in Grafton, I was speaking to one of the farmers there. He said, I've had to underinsure my property. I can only insure my house now because we've just had so many of these so-called once-in-a-100-year floods all happening in relatively quick succession. So the cost is being borne by our community, whereas there's still these enormous companies that are just reaping the rewards consistently.
There's got to be just bins full of paper shredding mulch of plans to get us out of this mess that go back 30 years. What's it like to keep producing ideas for industry, for business, for governments that get looked at, waved around at a photograph and then thrown out on a Thursday night?
Yeah, I think the thing that keeps me going is looking back at progress, and progress can seem just like it just happened. Like, we've now got 43% renewables in the grid. That was fought tooth and nail every step of the way. And it can be looked at, it just happened. No, it didn't happen. There were people who were deliberately pushing for that, struggling very hard, ongoing. Like Tony Abbott tried to kill it, Scott Morrison tried to kill it, but we still have a renewable energy target and we're heading towards it.
Our opposition party, the coalition party in Australia, they had a female leader for...
Was it a minute?
Well, no, I think it was just over a year. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot. And now being run by a man who... I actually have some of his stationery somewhere because I couldn't do anything. I went through a very tough period around climate anxiety. I couldn't do anything. So, but what I could do was write letters. And I wrote handwritten letters to people.
Yeah, good on you.
I got back from Angus Taylor. It's like the scene from American Psycho, like the paper, GSM, the font, the raised kerning on, like, it's amazing. He pays a lot of money for his stationery, but it was all very, everything's going to be great in our mineral sector, this and da-da-da. I've got it somewhere.
Yeah.
But this guy's now in charge. And I wonder, when I look at our country, and I look at how we generally vote towards the middle, towards, as is called in our country, a sensible centre. We're not complete opposites. We generally feel the same way about most things, despite what the bumper sticker people or the other people will tell you. We're more alike than we're not. Does someone like that have any hope trying to get elected with policies that don't look at all like the lives that most Australians are living.
Yeah, well, it's a great point. And unfortunately, during the Morrison era when Taylor was the energy minister, we saw his views on renewables, which is that he's very anti-renewables, which was a real problem at the time and will be again if he was to be re-elected. But by the time we get to 2028, the election, we may well be up to about 70% renewables. There will be no going back. So policies around like nuclear or let's build more coal or let's sweat coal forever and cost us all a fortune, like none of that will be a thing anymore. So they are going to really struggle with relevancy on particularly energy policy, but other things too, if they still can't pull their head out of the sand on climate and renewables. Like we talked about the economics before, and when I started working on climate, renewables was expensive, but now it's dirt cheap. And so we've got this amazing scenario. We can have our cake and eat it too. We can solve the environmental problems and have cheap energy. We just need to bring more renewables into the system quickly. Like, why wouldn't you? You'd have to be a massive ideologue in the other direction that's, pulling the bag over the head to not go that direction.
Part of me thinks that I wonder if it's that the people who are in power in our governmental system have been in that game since they were uni students, a long time. They rarely, if any, have been just a regular punter who had a go and is now in. They've been there since they were in there, probably high school, right? Yeah. So they've only ever known people in that circle, in that bubble. And yet I wonder if it's like I think about the television industry, right? Is it because the business models are so lumberingly, they've got so much momentum that they can't actually adapt quick enough? Like, is our leadership structure, is our parliamentary system so lumberingly slow in change, it actually can't adapt quick enough to follow what upward consumer pressure is telling them? That I know someone who in the 90s got solar power. They had to get BP, or like the people, the first ever solar thing that Sproul used to work for, or Shell, I think he worked for. It cost them like $150,000. Oh, wow. All right, and it's a 4 kilowatt system. Yeah. But this is 1992 or something, and it was no, I'm doing this because I have to do it. All right, yeah, I've got 20 kilowatts in thing on my roof for like not even a fifth, like a lot less than that. Right. So I wonder if the general Australian punter has just gone, well, I'm not waiting. Yeah, and I'm not waiting. This idea that you will. No, the government's job is to create these giant, big baseload things, and people pay us for that, and it's a state-owned thing, which it was for many years. It went private after a while. That is the model, and that's what we should do again. I don't think we're there. I think people are just going, no, man, I'm making money.
100%. Well, 4 million households have solar on the roof. Like, the level of penetration in Australia is higher than anywhere in the world, and that trend will just continue. And obviously we'll still need big renewables in the grid as well. But it's, I think people understand, I put panels on my roof, it'll lower my costs. So if I put panels on the nation, that will reduce our costs as well, because we're not paying the price for the sun and the wind. It's free, and we're the sunniest country in the world. We're one of the windiest. Obviously, there's some upfront cost in the technology, but we don't have to keep digging coal out of the ground forever. We don't have to keep mining gas. I think people know that now. But as you said, the politics, particularly on the coalition side, there just hasn't been a generational change, but there has been at a state government level. Yeah. So state government coalition parties have been much more positive on renewables and climate. Like think of Matt Keane's government here in New South Wales. He did a lot in this space. So there has been lots of bright spots.
I did a podcast with him in the middle of everything. I was still on antipsychotics when I was talking to him. Still unable to walk outside and feel the sun on my skin. Like horrible. It's horrible. And I was just like, oh, wow. You're a guy from over, like, because I'm still in polarized, fight or flight brain. Yeah. Like, you're the guy from over there. But the way he was talking was like, oh, man, I feel a lot better.
Yeah, and he was a Liberal treasurer that said renewables make economic sense. So it's very hard to argue against that.
Yeah. Telling the story of renewables is something that many people have been trying to do for a long time. Where do you think the Australian people, what part of the story have they not heard yet beyond the I get cheaper power bills?
People don't know how much of our power now comes from renewables. The assumption is it's around about 15 to 20% when it's well over 40% now. And when people understand that we're already at 43% renewables, they're like, oh, wow, sure we could go to 50, sure we could go to 60 or 70. But if people think we're just at 15 or 20, then there's some skepticism about how fast we can move. So part of my job is just telling people where we're at, because that is motivating for where we need to be.
Part of me wants to, like, if you say you've been in a coma and you've not moved for a year, right? To get from that to walking is a lot of work.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that's with renewables, that's kind of where we are. We're trying to get from not really quite getting there, one hand on the railing, to walking. We're on our own feet. We're not holding anybody. We're here, renewables. Yes, 43%, amazing. What happens when we get to 243%?
Yeah.
That amount of energy, what can we as a nation do with that?
Oh, it's so exciting. I think when you start to think about it in that, you go from scarcity to abundance. Okay, what can we do if we're that nation? Well, we can be exporting green metals. So we could be refining lithium, which is required for batteries and electric cars here. We could be refining green iron. Green iron is critical for the global clean energy transition. So Australia could be having a role in bringing global pollution down because of what we make here and export. That's what gets me really excited. And of course, in doing that, we could then say, well, let's stop exporting coal and gas, what is destroying the world, and let's export things that will build the world.
Yeah. It's I can't remember, I think it was Barnaby, former National Party guy, now One Nation. He was saying, like, oh, these guys, they want to, if you're making money in a business, they want to close the business. Why? No, it's like, nobody's saying that. It's like, you can stop selling this and start selling that, which way more people want.
Yeah.
It's not a question of economic security and nothing. It's a question of economic security and economic abundance.
Well, 100%. And there's a real disservice from that view from One Nation and the coalition generally to regional communities and farmers, because those communities are bearing the brunt of more extreme weather events. And the more that we can provide more stability and security, energy infrastructure can do that. A farmer can put panels on his farm and then also be grazing sheep at the same time. Then you have more resilience for your property. In the dry times, you're still making money out of the renewable energy. Many farmers are already doing that, and it's providing that resilience. And I think that the Nationals and One Nation really do such a disservice to people when they keep railing against it, when this could be a huge opportunity for most regional communities.
Is there base that can
100%.
benefit the most? And I understand why there's a bit of poo-pooing on such things. Like, oh, you're on this podcast, right? Well, what about the energy for the data center to serve the MP3 file to the people listening? What about the conflict minerals and the phones on the people listening? Didn't you fly here? Yeah. But you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. How do you rationalize the parts of the system that you exist in that conflict with the work you're trying to do?
Yeah. Well, I'm focusing my work on changing the system, because it's so hard for individuals to keep making so many tiny decisions to do the right thing, or whatever the right thing is. But I do try and make better decisions in my life where I can. So, for instance, I don't buy my kids toys that are disposable, that will break and be put in landfill in, a short period of time. I try and buy them toys that are going to be long lasting. They don't love that. My daughter was desperate for a Polly Pocket this birthday. And I was like, okay, we're getting a Polly Pocket. I didn't love that decision for myself, but, you've got to be existing in the world. All her friends have the thing. Where are your little guardrails, I suppose, in your own life where you're like, oh, that's going against my values? So I think it's about, as you said, it's not about being perfect, but making broadly decisions that you feel are aligned with your ethical position and trying to change the overall system that means we could all make more ethical decisions.
Having that boundary, certainly for someone in your position, is incredibly important. I worked with some long-time animal activists for a little bit. These are people who live alone. They have very few friends. They have a house full of creatures.
Yeah.
But because it's a problem that is never ending, they go to bed. This one particular person goes to bed every night feeling like they failed. How can we protect ourselves from that? Because yes, if you go to bed every night thinking I didn't save the world from environmental problems today, therefore I'm the worst human, I suck. How do you protect yourself from that?
Yeah. And I've gone through a number of periods of getting pretty low. And this summer was during the catastrophic weather was one of those times. We usually have bats fly over our place, and anyone that's watched Bluey might remember the episode where they say hello to the bats in the nighttime off the balcony and say goodnight to all the animals. Well, in January, we just didn't have any bats anymore, and our nightly ritual of saying hello to the bats kind of ended. And it was really confronting for me I find that the climate impacts at home, unsurprisingly, are the most impactive. And thinking back, I've been working on this for 20 years. What is the impact I've made? Have I failed? All of those sort of questions. But I think I said to you at the start, I've got this little cartoon that's been really inspiring me, which is this little picture of a cute little rabbit. And under one arm, she's got political outrage, and on the other arm, she's got magic and whimsy. And I got to thinking about that cartoon, that the political outrage can only be sustained so much unless you're bringing the fuel of joy and what you love about the world. And I think the antidote to that sense of despair for me is that joy of the things that my kids do, the songs that we make up, the silliness, the loving nature, even though we have to witness some of the destruction that is inherent to what we're experiencing. So there's a holding of multiple realities in the mind, which is like a little small mammal, is very challenging. I think when we're not really built for these times in many ways. So that, like, your word was like, how do we protect ourselves? I think protection is a good word, and it's worth talking about, like, how do we consume information in a way that is going to protect our sense of self, that we're not consumed by information, that it is fuel rather than, going to break us.
You can't, two things can be true.
Yeah.
I can be desperately in love with my wife and also considering breaking up every day. And everyone who is married knows that's true, but no one's brave enough to say it. Like, that's kind of it. That's what it is to be in a relationship. It's hard when the emotions behind one of them are so powerful and so tied, as we spoke earlier. But as you mentioned, if we stay there, we can get burnt out and things can get very difficult. It can be very hard for us to start to perceive the world in a rational way and see the things that are good.
And humans, we're so driven by stories. Like, we live in a world that's constructed by the stories that we tell. And if we tell ourselves a story that the world's going to hell in a handbasket, all people are terrible, and it's broadly just all going to shit, and we tell ourselves that story every day, and we saturate ourselves with media and social media that's telling us that same story, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to tell a better story about what the future is going to be, as like Christiana Figueres talks about as stubborn optimism. It's not like unrealistic hope that's just kind of blind faith it will be better. It's realistic about the scale of the challenges, but then it's also telling ourselves a story. We can fix it. We can do it together. We can build a world that it's not necessarily going to be the same or better. Like, those words are kind of irrelevant now, but it will be a world that will be as good as it can be almost. And it's not the most inspiring phrase to bring people along to, but I like the idea of stubborn optimism because it implies it's a deliberate choice to be positive and to build a story about what we can do together.
What role does hope play in that?
I think increasingly for me, hope doesn't feel right for the times. I feel like hope feels like a word that feels a bit fragile, like things have to be going right to continue to feel hopeful. And that feels brittle right now. So I like the word stubborn optimism better because it sounds more deliberate. It sounds like a muscle that you are exercising every day and a choice and a strategy. It's a strategy because a lot of what happened, like I think the Epstein files have sort of rocked the world for some of these reasons, that the power holders that this small group of people that were operating for exploitation and concentrated wealth and power and immune to what was going on, like the transparency is the antidote to that. And you can start thinking, oh, well, all people are bad, humanity is terrible. Well, no, that group of people was terrible. And actually most people in the world are good. Got to kind of help yourself to see the good in the world, to keep telling yourself that story of actually people are good for the most part. We can do good things. We can fix things. I find that really important to me when I think like most people that this started this year has been particularly bad news.
Yeah.
and you can get like in a real doom spiral about it.
I have protected myself a little by disengaging somewhat, but not to the point where I'm done, I'm out, I don't care.
Yeah.
All right, because that is the real danger. The real danger is, and I understand it, but I have dialed it right down. I give myself enough to know, but I don't sit there and scratch the itch like it's eczema.
Oh, it's so important, and my brain is really wired to that. I know that if I start like looking at some terrible piece of news, I will go all the way down the rabbit hole. And there's that Nietzsche phrase, if you look into the abyss, it looks into you. And I feel like at times, you know, when you doom scroll, it is looking into you and it's changing your story about who we are, who the world is, in a way that means you will not be useful to the world. And I can see that in myself sometimes, and I'm like, no, the way that I cope with kind of grief for what the world was and what might be lost is I do relentless planning for myself. I'm like, no, you are not allowed to have social media apps on your phone. No, you are not allowed to have news apps on your phone. You're allowed only this much news a day. And this is, I'm kind of like quite restrictive to myself, and I blow it all the time. But the planning really helps me. Like, you need to exercise. You need to go and stand in the sun. You need to do these little things, because we all know what the things are. But I find having that little checklist, I'm like, okay, Boss Amanda has told me what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess that's something that we might need to be more deliberate about, because the fact is there's a lot of people make a lot of money on us being stuck into that and scrolling through story after story of things being terrible. They make money off our eyeballs. We just feel horrid.
Yeah,
and that's not a good deal for me. So
no, and for kids in particular, like the lack of responsibility for the social media giants on our children's mental health drives me wild. Like, great, the government has doing something, but the penalties for the content that gets out there to children needs to be so much higher.
The idea of this stubborn optimism, I kind of like the idea of, here's the bad news. I'm going to stare at it and be with it until I can just let my, like when you're stretching something and your body just goes, oh. I'm going to stare at it and I'm going to be with it until my body goes, okay, there it is. All right, there we are.
Yeah.
Like to be in acceptance of it, not to deny it, but to go, okay, so now I live my life and that. Great. So I'm going to still go off and have, got to go see that gig or, eat pizza or whatever. Knowing that's true, I can do that.
And that's that holding two realities in your mind at the same time. Say, it is very bad, but in the present moment, I'm going to choose joy, choose the things that will nurture me and keep me going. It is a complicated thing, though, for the human brain to not then ruminate on the things that you're most worried about and the things that might wake you up at night, etc. So I also do something where I've got I plan, like if I wake up in the night panicking about something, here are my nice thoughts, my little list of nice thoughts that I'm going to spend time thinking about. So I think it's that deliberateness about helping your brain to get the right information is important.
I was talking with Wolf the other night. He was really annoyed that he couldn't fall asleep. And I was just trying to tell him, the thing with falling asleep, we don't get to choose when it happens.
Yeah.
We can just relax ourselves and our body will decide. But if we keep wishing for it to happen, it just gets further and further away.
Tricky.
I used to struggle a lot. But once I stopped trying to fight it, we're oh, I'm awake. I guess I'll read my book.
Yep.
And, for an hour and a half. I've never heard the one of a list of nice thoughts. If people wanted to try this, what kind of thoughts are we talking about?
So I just read my daughter the book Nim's Island, which people might remember. It's a story where there's a girl on an island and they have fantastical adventures. And so I've started writing a story in my mind about a girl who lives in a treehouse with her family. And it's just a little story, and I try and create additional little things that could happen, because my brain likes little sort of puzzles, but not that it's stressful enough that you're kind of getting into thinking. And I do the mindfulness technique that if I start going down into something else, I bring me back to the treehouse, and I try and do a lot of visualization, what exactly does a tree look like? What's the texture of the bark? What does the paint on the inside of the house look like? Yeah. Those sorts of things.
It's just trying to convince the part of your brain that says, we should be doing something, we should be fixing.
Yeah.
That is fixing. I am fixing by looking after myself right now so I can do some fixing later.
And one thing that I've realized the hard way this year was my partner said to me at some point, like, that list that you referred to when I was 18, I'm like, we will fix the world. And I'm like white knuckle holding on to, we will save all of the species. We will fix this thing. And I hadn't realized how much I was holding on to the future needs to be the past, essentially. Right. And that is an impossible thing to be reaching for. And he just said to me, do you know that you, like, more than anyone, you're like, I'm going to hold on to this thing. And actually I hadn't accepted any of the grief that was building up inside me. And it was this, like, big thing. And I was like, oh, but I don't want to look at that thing. I've just been stuffing it down for years and years. But I actually asked some friends, like, I want to talk about this thing, and it's like my sadness and fears. Are you able to hear that information? They're like, yes. I was like, are you sure? Because it's really, like, I'm really scared. And they're like, yeah, that's okay. And then I told them stuff, and lo and behold, it was helpful. Yeah. And it, like, let something out. And I was like, oh, people aren't necessarily scared to hear your worldview. It can be something that you do. And I know it's not a revelation because many people do this, but that degree of, like, I have grief about this and I can say it and, like, honor that was a really big step for me in feeling a bit more acceptance that there is going to be change and it's not okay, but it's just the thing that's going to happen. And if I can have that acceptance, like you're saying, just look at it, I'm going to be more useful to the world.
I had to go through that grief part, but I had to let go of this God-sized hubris that I had to be a part of fixing it within my lifetime.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah, I think I'm letting go of that too.
You talked earlier about being on holidays with your children at the beach, going through dragon caves. There was a time I couldn't go near the water, all right? I couldn't do it. Do the thoughts come and bother you when you're with your kids and you're knowing what the world they're growing up in and, like, you know how much water is sitting in those polar ice caps? You have a look at the water level at high tide and you look at where the houses or the town is and you go, oh, yeah.
You know, in horror movies where it's often like the kids on the swing and it's idyllic and then you hear the ee-er, and then it's like disaster. Yeah. I often get that vibe when I'm having a really nice time with my kids. I feel like this is the memory bit of the horror movie.
It's the last minute of Terminator 2.
Yeah, and I just have to and I'm not that good at, like, putting
Terminator, last minute of Terminator 1 when she drives off, yeah.
What I've done in the past is just shove it down.
Yeah.
Be like, stop thinking this, why are you doing this? Like, get this out of your mind type thing. I've started to try and, like, actually verbalize it to myself to say, like, I'm finding this hard because I'm thinking about what we're losing and being like, it's okay to have that moment but at the moment I'm just going to concentrate on X. But I found it hard to know how much to encourage my children to love nature because they will witness destruction and feel the same sense of grief that I am feeling. But on the other hand, that is so much of the richness of life. But it's kind of letting go of the imperfections. Like, there's a creek near us that we spend a lot of time in. There's often rubbish in the creek. And my kids see me, like, enthusiastically picking up all the rubbish. And they're like, oh, Mum, you're doing that thing again. But I think, well, I'm instilling in them a sense of, like, this is what we do. We are part of our environment. We clean it up. They're like, that's not your rubbish. So it's all of our rubbish because we live here. I think that sometimes a view in climate change is, oh, I will escape at some future time. I'll run away to Tasmania. There is no escaping. We are where we are and we will all be affected. And there's something like that can be scary for people, but it's also like, well, let's dive in and really protect and build this community that we're in. Let's make ourselves as resilient as possible. Let's collectively pick up the rubbish, if you like. And so I feel like the time and the environment for me is also about, like, I'm here instilling values. This is what we care about. And it's not kind of giving away that perfection. Like, this creek is always going to be pristine because it just isn't.
And it's like within your lifetime, within my lifetime. But what was it 100 years before that?
Yeah.
300 years before that.
I sometimes think about the Indigenous people walking through that area of Melbourne and thinking the amount of invasive species in the area, the destruction of what they would have seen as, like, a beautiful environment, they would look at it and think this is a disaster. But people might walk through that parklands and think it's beautiful. And it's kind of that it is what it is. and like, let's use that as the baseline and try and build from there.
So you've worked in this for 20 plus years. You've got 2 children. They're both under 10, primary school. Do they know what mum does for work? Do they know why mum is a bit weird sometimes on holiday when they're at the beach?
Yeah, they know I work on climate change, but they don't know what it is. But my little boy is an enthusiast. He'll wind down the windows in our electric car and shout out, "Stop polluting," to random people on the street. Whereas my daughter's told me, your job's not, you should get famous for being Taylor Swift, not for doing what you're doing. But I want to kind of keep them away from the state of the world as much as possible. And I think about the lives that our children will live may be more difficult than ours. So the scaffolding that they have in their young life of feeling loved and safety and being as carefree as possible feels really important. So I try and just keep them really like off devices, and having like a childhood is, I think, what it feels most important to me.
People listening and they're like, yeah, I feel you. We talked a lot about hope and optimism and the impacts of the future. Where do you start? Where do people start?
Yeah, start small. Find an organisation that you like, give a small donation, give $10. Sign up to something that they're doing. They might be sending emails to the Prime Minister. Do one of those emails. Or plant a little native plant in your garden. Like, start with something small that you can see and go, I did the thing. And then you build from there. I think choosing what is your sphere of influence, like maybe it's your workplace, maybe it's your school, and the issue that you're going to care about. I think making it tangible and kind of concrete, the boundaries around it. Because as you were saying earlier, like the speed and scale of global change can make it feel futile to do anything. But that is the recipe to us all giving up, and that being a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we all need to find a thing to do and to contribute. There's nothing more important than citizenry right now. I think when you look at the news and you see the corruption and the exploitation of people, and none of that will change unless the citizenry is united and coming together and feels like they can do something. So cultivating a sense of like, I can contribute is important in all of us, I think.
We could talk for a long time, but it is warm in here. Not mostly because of climate change, because the window's shut to keep the noise out. Thanks for coming.
Oh, no worries.
That was really fun.